Happiness slips from the grasp of those who chase it, like a cat pursuing its own tail. The faster you whirl, the dizzier you become, and the tail remains just out of reach. This is not a moral lesson, nor a trick of language. It is the way of things, the simple grammar of life. The very intention to seize happiness tightens the muscles, narrows the gaze, and turns the mind into a clenched fist. But life will not be squeezed into a fist. It is water. Try to hold it and it leaks through your fingers. Relax your hand and let it rest upon your open palm, and there it is, cool, effortless, shining. The secret to happiness is not pursuing it. Happiness flowers when you stop cultivating the soil with frantic hands and allow the garden to grow. You cannot coerce the sun into rising earlier, nor can you negotiate with the tide. To make happiness a goal is to turn it into a horizon. Each step toward it merely relocates the distance. You can spend a lifetime chasing sunsets, never noticing that twilight has spread blush and gold across the very sky above your head. The insistence that you must be happy is the very recipe for restlessness, a subtle violence against the moment as it is. Listen, life is not a journey to a future where the music will finally begin. Life is the music. If you treat the symphony as an obstacle course to sprint through for the final crashing chord, you miss the lilt of the flute, the low warmth of the cello, the soft percussion that is this breath. The point of a dance is not to arrive at the far corner of the room. The dance is the point. And when you try to use the dance to get somewhere else, to be happy later, you trip over your own feet now. Let me put it plainly. You are not a separate self standing outside the world, collecting experiences like seashells to display on the shelf of a future day. You are the sea itself, the curling wave that rises and falls because the whole ocean breathes. When you imagine that happiness is a private possession, you shrink the sea to a puddle and wonder why it evaporates. But when you recognize that you are movement, not a statue, that you are process, not product, that you are verb, not noun, happiness appears as ease, the ease of water flowing downhill without asking why. So we begin here, not as seekers with nets and jars, but as witnesses in an orchard where fruit ripens when it will. We begin by noticing that grasping at happiness creates tension, and tension creates noise, and in that noise we cannot hear the quiet bell that has been ringing in the center of our chest since before we learned words. The bell does not ask to be chased, it only asks to be heard. Now, notice how the mind protests. If I do not pursue happiness, won't I stagnate? Won't I fall into despair? The mind is a loyal servant, but it is a nervous one, forever checking the locks. It assumes that without its vigilance, the house of life will be burglarized. But the house is not under attack. It is a home surrounded by trees and seasons that come and go whether or not you pace the hallway. There is a profound difference between participation and pursuit. Participation is to join the dance already underway. Pursuit is to run past the music in search of a trophy that melts in the hand. Think of a pool of still water. Throw in your fear of missing out, your conviction that you must improve yourself into worthiness, and the surface wrinkles with waves. Try to drink, and you only get mouthfuls of ripples. But sit beside the pool, breathe with it, and the surface clears. You can see straight to the bottom, and what you drink will actually quench your thirst. Happiness, then, is clarity without pressure, the felt recognition that reality as it is, this very moment, is not an adversary to subdue, but a friend to, or lean into. When you are not trying to extract happiness, happiness leaks in from the edges, like sunlight through half-closed blinds. Consider also the paradox of play. Children do not play to become happy, they play because play is their nature. The result is delight. Adults reverse the order. They attempt to be delighted so that they might allow themselves to play. We insist on permission slips for joy. But life, in its wild generosity, issues the permission slip by default. It is we who keep tearing it up and then lamenting our emptiness. When you stop doing that, when you stop turning the moment into a means, something opens, effortless as a yawn that unfurls from the spine. And in that opening there is space enough for the heart to breathe, and what you call happiness is simply that breath recognized. This is not a prescription to abandon your projects or renounce your loves. It is an invitation to change the angle, from hunting to listening, from coercion to collaboration. When the musician listens to the instrument, the music becomes honest. When you listen to your life, the living becomes simple. Not easy, mind you, simple. Complexity remains. Seasons still change. Sorrows still visit. But the strain of chasing the tail of happiness relaxes, and without the chase, the tail sometimes curls of its own accord into your lap. Let us wander deeper into the forest. The path is dappled with paradox, and paradox is simply truth looking at itself in a mirror. Do nothing, I say, and all will be done. This is not laziness, it is intimacy. There is a way of doing that is aligned with the doing of the whole. The leaf does not strategize how to fall, it follows the breeze and the law of its own weight. When you act from that alignment, your actions do themselves, and the strain that calls itself the pursuit of happiness dissolves into a kind of lucid competence, the grace of things, going as they go. You have been trained very earnestly to improve yourself as if you were raw material to be refined into a final product. A you who will one day be happy, but who will crown this achievement? The one doing the improving is a phantom assembled from memories and expectations. Like a rainbow, the ego appears real until you chase it, then it recedes. The more you identify with that phantom project manager of your life, the more you divide the world into me and not me, now and later, worthy and unworthy. Division breeds friction, friction breeds heat, heat breeds the anxiety we then try to cool with acquisitions, accomplishments, and plans for eventual contentment. Ask yourself, not as an exam, but as a gentle curiosity, who is it that wants to be happy? If you look carefully, you will not find a solid manager at the center, only a stream of desires, images, and voices playing tag. The more you search for the owner of the house, the more you find a chorus of visitors. The discovery is not discouraging. It is liberating. For if there is no singular controller to be satisfied, there is no final invoice to be paid before joy begins. There is only the ongoing dance of sensations, thoughts, surroundings, the whole orchestra tuning itself moment by moment. Think of the way you breathe when you stop thinking about breathing. The body breathes itself. It has done so since the first wail of air filled your lungs. When you attempt to force or perfect it, you may make yourself dizzy. But when you notice it, appreciate it, allow it, the breath becomes a friend whose rhythm is the metronome of being alive. In the same way, let your life breathe itself. Notice agendas forming. Bow to them. Let them pass through. Notice hopes rising. Respect them. Do not mortgage the present to purchase their fulfillment. The point is not to banish desire, it is to stop making. Desire your tyrant. Desire can be a breeze that fills a sail. It need not be a gale that capsizes the boat. Consider the ocean again. Waves arise and fade. The surface seethes with dramas, little and grand. But the ocean does not pursue a calmer wave. Calm is not a trophy. It is the depth already there. When your attention rests in that depth, the surface can be playful, even stormy, and there is still a fundamental okayness that does not depend upon weather reports. Happiness in this sense is not the absence of sorrow, but the presence of intimacy, with sorrow, with joy, with not knowing. Intimacy means you let the world touch you, and you touch it back without putting conditions on the exchange. A story. A man spends his life saving for a golden day when he will retire to a house by the sea and finally relax. He works like a mule, postponing afternoon walks, ignoring the taste of his tea. When he arrives at the sea, the habit of postponement follows him like a faithful dog. He sits in the chair and plans how to enjoy the sunset tomorrow. He has mastered pursuit so completely that he cannot participate. What he needed was never the sea. He needed to lose the compulsive belief that the next moment holds the key to this one. The sea is not a place, it is a way of seeing. When you see in that way, a cup of tea in a noisy kitchen is an ocean. The steam rises like a mist, and you are already retired from striving. There is also the trap of comparing happiness, as if contentment were a competition with medals awarded by invisible judges. The comparison mind says, if I am happier than you, I am safe. But comparison is a treadmill, energy expended, scenery unchanged. The relief lies in stepping off, not in indifference, but in trust. Trust what? the uncanny rightness of events once you stop insisting that they conform to the blueprint drafted by your anxious imagination. This trust is not blind. It has eyes wide open. It sees that life, like a good jazz ensemble, becomes most alive when the players listen to one another, respond, and leave room for silence. You might say, but without pursuit, how will anything get done? Watch a child absorbed in drawing. There is great doing there, lines, smudges, colors, and yet the child is not using the drawing as a ladder to happiness. She is happiness, drawing. The work emerges from the state of play. Adults can rediscover this by shifting from the language of in order to the language of as an expression of. Create, not in order to be happy, but as the expression of the contentment already present when you are not at war with the moment. Love, not in order to secure joy, but as joy's overflow. What about suffering, the real, blunt edges of life? To say that the secret to happiness is not pursuing, it is not to deny pain. Pain is part of the dance, the foot that is stepped on, the misstep that teaches balance, the grief that testifies to love. The pursuit of happiness tries to anesthetize pain, and in doing so often dulls joy as well. Intimacy with pain is not masochism. It is humility. It says, this too. When this too is welcomed into awareness, pain becomes a messenger rather than a permanent address. And the curious thing is that when you treat pain with the same courtesy you extend to pleasure, both become less sticky. They pass through like weather, sometimes torrential, sometimes mild, always changing. In this deeper seeing, happiness is a climate of friendliness toward experience. It is not won, it is recognized. The mind will still propose schemes. That is its métier. Let it. Offer it tea. Meanwhile, feel the chair supporting you, the breath swaying the body, the sound of the world playing you like an instrument. This is not an achievement unlocked. It is the default setting revealed when you stop pressing all the buttons. Now let me turn the lens toward daily life, where philosophy earns its keep, by becoming the texture of Tuesday afternoon. Begin with this simple practice. Replace the word get with give, not as self-sacrifice, but as alignment. When you wake, do not ask, how will I get happiness today? Ask, how will I give myself to this day so that happiness, if it arises, has room to stretch? Give your attention, full-bodied, unhurried, to the person speaking to you, to the steam curling from your mug, to the task under your hands. Attention is love without the story, and love is the atmosphere in which happiness breathes. Try this too. When you notice the urge to fix the moment, pause and feel the urge itself. Where does it sit in the body? Does it buzz like a wire, tighten like a belt, flutter like a bird? Give it a little bow. In bowing, you admit it exists without becoming its employee. Then act, if action is called for, but from the steadiness that comes of seeing, rather than from the tension that comes of chasing. This single move from compulsion to courtesy transforms errands into ceremonies. You will still buy the milk, answer the email, make the phone call. Yet each will be done as an expression of a deeper ease, not as a transaction for future happiness. In relationships, shift from negotiation to presence. We often approach one another as merchants of emotion. If you behave thus, I will deliver happiness to you. If you fail, I will withhold it. That is commerce, and the currency is resentment. Instead, try meeting as weather meets land, completely without contract. Listen with your whole body, not to prepare a rebuttal, but to receive a life. When two people meet in this way, happiness becomes the shared climate rather than a commodity to trade. Arguments still happen, of course. Storms roll through. But beneath them there is a bedrock of kinship. We are waves of the same sea that makes reconciliation natural. Work can become a playground for non-pursuit. Notice how often productivity is animated by fear of falling behind, of being revealed as insufficient, of missing the train to the mythical city called success. Fear can sprint, but it cannot dance. Instead of sprinting, orient your work as craft. Craft is devotion to the doing for its own sake, to the timbre of a sentence, the curve of a bowl, the clarity of a spreadsheet, the elegance of a line of code. Craft sings, not because it will be applauded, but because singing is its nature. Paradoxically, the finest results often arrive when you stop wringing them from yourself. When you enjoy the means, the ends tend to take care of themselves, like fruit that appears after long, patient sunlight. Another practice: schedule emptiness. Not as a technique to trap happiness, but as a way to remember that you are not a machine. Sit with nothing to accomplish for 10 minutes. Let the room be the room. Let the breath be the breath. When thoughts arrive carrying clipboards, thank them and show them to the waiting room. Often in this simplicity, a natural lightness returns, a subtle smile that does not need a reason. You discover that the engine of more quiets down when it is not constantly fed. Happiness tiptoes in like a cat at dusk and curls on the windowsill. And then there is play. Adults tend to outsource play to weekends and holidays, and even then, they insist on tracking it in steps and calories and photographs, proof that the fun occurred. Play vanishes when it must prove itself. Let yourself do small, useless things. Hum while washing dishes, walk without your phone, scribble nonsense, watch the shadow of a leaf wobble across the table. Uselessness is not waste. It is rest for the utilitarian mind. From that rest, usefulness returns refreshed, like a field left fallow. Happiness happens to frequent these fallow fields. What of ambition? It is not the villain, it is merely one guest at the banquet. Seat it politely, but do not let it commandeer the table. Ambition says, must I climb the mountain? Fine, climb, but climb as a mountain does, steady and present, not as an escapee, fleeing an invisible prison. If you reach the summit and find the same self waiting with the same dissatisfaction, do not curse the mountain. Smile at the loyal pattern that followed you up the trail. Then sit, eat your orange, share it with a stranger, and notice the wind combing the grass. The summit is not a finishing line. It is a balcony where you remember that you were allowed to enjoy the path all along. Here is a practical mantra. As this, thus. Meet each situation as this, exactly as it presents, and respond thus, simply, appropriately, without added theater. A sink full of dishes, as this, thus, warm water, sponge, round motions. A friend in grief, as this, thus, gentle presence, fewer words, a hand. The marriage of as this and thus produces a curious warmth, because it spares you the friction of insisting that life be other than it is before you will engage with it. Relief is hidden in the obvious. Happiness is shy but not fickle. It approaches when the room is quiet and the invitation is sincere. Finally, practice gratitude not as a ledger entry, but as savoring. Pause before eating, not to perform piety, but to actually taste the first bite, to register the ground beneath your chair, the sky doing whatever the sky is doing. Gratitude is the recognition that existence is happening as a gift you did not arrange. In that recognition, the compulsion to pursue happiness softens, because the fact of being here becomes astonishing enough. We come now to the soft heart of the matter, the transformation that occurs when you cease to treat your life as a project and begin to live it as a mystery. The ego thrives on projects. Mysteries, however, invite participation rather than control. When you allow the mystery, a subtle shift occurs. The tight orbit of me loosens, and you find yourself spacious, as if windows had been opened in a stuffy room. In that spaciousness, unhappiness cannot take root as easily because its favorite nutrient, resistance, has been diminished. Letting go of the ego is not a surgical procedure. It is more like laughing at a convincing impersonator. The ego strides onto the stage and declares, I am the one who must secure happiness. The audience, your thoughts, applauds dutifully. But then you notice a wobble in the performance. The lines are rehearsed, the costume a little too crisp. You smile, and in the smile the spell weakens. Each time you notice the impersonation and respond with humor rather than hostility, the actor bows and exits. What remains is not a void but an immediacy, a present that needs no manager. Spiritual freedom is not floating above life. It is sinking fully into it without drowning. It is the freedom to cry and to laugh without turning either into a strategy. It is to hold grief like rain cupped in two hands, to feel its cool honesty, and to release it when it runs through your fingers. It is to meet joy without handcuffs, allowing it to visit and depart without interrogations. When you relate to your experience in this way, happiness becomes a natural weather pattern of the open sky you are, not a contrived climate you maintain with elaborate machinery. Meaning is often imagined as a code to decipher, an answer at the back of the book. But meaning is not hidden behind the world. It is the world, experienced directly. A walk is meaningful when it is walked, not when it is explained. A kiss is meaningful in the kiss. You do not need to add meaning the way you add sugar to tea. You need to stop diluting meaning with pursuit. Life is already saturated with significance like a ripe fruit, heavy with juice. Bite it. Let it run down your chin. That mess is holy. When you live in this way, participatory, intimate, non-coercive, you discover a peace that is not brittle. It survives the day's inconveniences, the long queue, the missed call, even the disappointments that bend the heart. This peace is not an achievement. It is your native condition revealed when the noise of striving quiets. It does not mean you stop caring. On the contrary, caring becomes less frantic, more skillful, more like a steady flame than a fireworks display. From this steady flame, compassion radiates, not as a noble ideal, but as the obvious response of one wave to another in the same sea. And now, a simple, powerful closing practice, less a technique than a remembrance. Sit comfortably. Let your hands rest where they wish. Feel the gentle tug of gravity. Notice that you do not have to hold yourself up. Something is holding you. Let the breath come. Do not decorate it. Just feel the coolness at the nostrils, the soft warmth on the outflow. Let sounds arrive from near and far. A clock, a passing voice, the low hum of the world. Imagine you are not listening to sounds, but that the whole field of sound is playing you like wind through chimes. Notice how, without pursuing anything at all, a rightness gathers, unforced. Thoughts float through, each carrying a little offer. Follow me, and you will be happy. Smile at the salesman, let them pass. Happiness is already here, not as a prize, but as the texture of presence. Let a sentence rise now like a buoy in the water. Nothing is missing from this moment. Say it inwardly. Then test it. Is anything missing from this breath? From the pressure of the chair? From the wide, quiet space that holds sensations, thoughts, and the world together in one seamless happening? You may detect discomfort, uncertainty, even fatigue. But watch closely. Are they missing from the moment, or are they included? When everything belongs, pursuit loses its purpose. The moment no longer needs to be dragged into compliance. It is already whole, and because you are not separate from it, you are whole right here. Let the edges soften. The room is the body. The body is the room. The boundary between you and the sound of a bird blur is until there is only hearing. In such hearing, happiness is not an object but a tone, the natural resonance of a life not held at gunpoint by its own expectations. Feel how the chest loosens, how the jaw unclenches, how the forehead grows cool. In this softening there is a humility that is not humiliation, a surrender that is not defeat. You did not conquer happiness. You stopped marching and realized the parade was already moving through you. Carry this with you as you rise. Do not make it into a new pursuit. Do not draft goals titled, "Be present." Simply notice again and again that the aliveness you seek is seeking no one. It is here, and you are it. Let your errands be prayers without words. Let your conversations be shared weather. Let your sleep be an embrace of the night. And when worry returns, as it does, as it will, offer it tea. Offer it breath, and remember the cat that stops chasing its tail and discovers that the tail has been purring beside it all along. Set down the nets, open the hand, walk as if you are being carried, because you are. Let happiness be what it has always been, not the quarry of the hunter, but the quiet of the forest itself, in which the hunter at last sits down, hears the wind, and discovers he has arrived where he never left.